the world. So I'd like to give. Hey, I just got a recording in progress. All right. So on that note, I just want to hand it over to my colleague Eva to introduce herself, talk a little bit about her background. I'll flip it back to me, and then we'll kind of take it from there. So Eva, please, my dear friend, introduce yourself.
Ruben. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be with all of you here today. My name is Eva Wisnik. I'm based in New York City. I've had my own business for 25 years. It was 25 years in March. And in terms of some of the challenges, I really do feel like I identify with all of you so closely, both in terms of finding great talent and retaining great talent, and yet finding a way to make time for our own well-being, because we cannot support other people, do the best work we can for our clients and customers if we don't take care of ourselves. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm certified in the from the Institute of Nutritional Studies as a wellness coach, something I've been using a great deal during the pandemic. I also have a degree in marketing, and I've been working with Ben for many years, and super excited to be here with all of you today.
Great. Thank you, Eva. And for those small business owners watching live or on replay, Eva is also an immigrant. She came to this country when she was a young child, and really has lived the American dream in building her business for 25 years. And we all know, as business owners, making it 1 year, to say nothing of 25 years, is a tremendous accomplishment. So we're going to get into that as well here. So let's talk a little bit about what the SBDC is. And it is to advance South Carolina's economic development by helping entrepreneurs grow successful businesses. I am very happy to be part of the SBDC. And I'm not going to read this slide, but really our area of expertise is pretty much so everything. You want to start a business, you want to grow your business, you want to get involved in government contracting, you want to get into export, import, you want to talk about cybersecurity, which is a very important topic these days. The SBDC is here to help you, to support you, to be here for you. We have consultation, which is no fee private consultation. We work with clients all the time. How do I do this? A lot of our questions have been, how do I, how do I get loans? How do I emerge from the pandemic? There are more than 50 business consultants, including myself, that are here to help those start and grow their business. Education, we do webinars like you see here. There are conferences, there are events. Most of the training, folks, is no or low cost, which is wonderful. You can watch all the recorded sessions on YouTube and the Facebook channel as well here. And then finally, on the resource side, we can provide referrals. We can connect you with other small business leaders. We can help understand cash flow and your books. And really, at the end of the day, the SC SBDC here, we just want to help everyone succeed as best as possible here. So here's a great quote from one of our clients about how we have helped them. That's Rooting Down Farms. So certainly we are here. So I'm going to pass this, I'm going to kind of frame this presentation. It's going to be a little conversational, but I'm going to frame this conversation. And we're going to ask some of you to do a little bit of work here. And what do we want to achieve here, with the remaining time here in our webinar? We want to really hammer home why taking care of your own wellness is a must. Many of us, it becomes such an afterthought. If you have a family, if you own a business, if you run a business, by the time you get through your punch list of everything you need to do in your day, if you're like most people, you're going to put yourself at the very, very end. And that's a problem. It impacts your ownership. It impacts your recruitment. It impacts your retention. So we're going to work a little bit here on how to put yourself first. And believe it or not, it is actually going to be a little bit easier than you actually think it is if you just make a few conscious decisions here. So that being said, I do want to hand this over to my colleague, Eva. She has developed this, and she's going to tell a little bit about what this is. I know it didn't render as well with our dots there, but you'll get the general gist here. So, Eva, talk about a time management audit. What is this? Talk to us here.
Yeah. So I've actually taught time management to over 7,000 professionals, but I use it as part of the well-being because so often not having enough time, feeling stressed because of time commitments is something that really affects our wellness. And I want you to step back, and we just literally started the second half of 2021 on July 1st, a couple of days ago. And I want you to stop and just do like a little bit of self-assessment and say, where do I currently spend my time, and where could I potentially make some changes and invest time in things like my well-being. So, if you look at this, we all have 168 hours in a week, no matter who we are. It could be somebody working for you, it could be, you know, a client. We all literally start with the same amount. And I think of time as a resource, sort of like money, where what you invest in is going to give you a certain return. So I know many of us are working, 50, 60-hour weeks, if not more. You've got responsibilities, you've got things that are sort of mindless that we sometimes don't realize how much time we're spending on, whether it's surfing the internet or watching TV. But I also want you to zero in on the self-care habits, whatever that might look like for you. Are you currently spending a couple hours a week, whether it's making time to make healthy food or to exercise or to be out in nature, whatever that is that will replenish you? When I think of self-care, I want you to think like, what's going to fill that bucket? Because when we're depleted, we're not going to be great for anybody. Worrying about things, we've all gone through so much uncertainty. It could be physically, it could be with our businesses, it could be with our families. How much time is that sucking up? Sleeping, maybe we want to add to sleeping, and others. So I want you to kind of maybe think about this a little bit. And if you can, take paper to pencil or just kind of start sketching this out for yourself. And then say, okay, as we approach the second half of 2021, where would I like to shift some of my time and reinvest in things that are really going to sustain me, such as sleep, self-care. So that's where I think of this, Ben. And, again, I think so often we're just so reactive all the time, but how can we make the best choices when we don't know kind of where we are? So it's like taking your temperature, kind of checking in.
I just want to jump in there and say that when I first did this, I was actually blown away by where my time goes, and really where I would be able to find some cost savings in my life, in my time here. So this is an important chart. I recommend everyone, if not now, certainly later, but this is an important thing to do. So you quickly see why sometimes you feel you don't have much time. You might not have time, and now you might understand why there is. So Eva, I'll go to the next slide here.
Great, thank you. So I think this is a good question to ask yourself, to kind of boil it down to something very actionable, because I think both Ben and I are very much about this is not a theoretical exercise. It's what can you take away and really be able to use, whether it's this afternoon, tomorrow, next month, the rest of the year. So if you ask yourself even that question, if I had an extra hour a day, what would you do with it? What would you do that would really help, again, replenish you, sustain you, re-energize you, take care of yourself? Is there anything that you would do? Maybe it's delegating something, maybe it's making sure you have the right food in the fridge. Ben, what would you do?
Well, before I answer, those of you that are here live, if you can just type in what you would do with an extra hour a day, I promise I won't read your names. It'll be completely anonymous. But if you could just type in, if you had an extra hour a day, what would you do with it? For me, if I had an extra hour a day, and I try very hard to get it, is I would actually take my dogs on a much longer walk and use that time to listen to podcasts. The beauty of podcasts, for those that need to either plug out, and it could be on anything. You name the topic, everyone knows there's podcasts on everything. Is I love diving deep into something that I don't know about. I find that it stimulates the brain. It might distract from a bad day. It might trigger a thought that helps me run my business differently. Um, and so I would like to take that hour a day, and I would just like to put on the headphones, grab a dog or two, and do a really long walk, but use that walk to also listen to something new, discover something new. Eva, what would you do?
Yeah, that's a great. And I want to hear some people putting some great things in there. By the way, I love the podcast thing too, and I do it quite often. I find it so, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's so good to get new ideas too. And I have done that, and even on long drives, I listen to podcasts quite a bit. it is exercise, and I do a fairly good job. I probably do it 3 times a week at least, but if I could do it every day, have a really great workout. I went to a class this morning. I find I have to go to classes or do something structured because otherwise I might not do it if it's just sort of left up to
Mhm.
me. I can walk on my own, but to actually do some like weights and things like that, it's a game changer. So I think for me, it would definitely be exercise. Let's see what other people say. Think we've got some
Yeah.
comments in there.
Yeah, so we have crochet, spending time with grandbabies, listening to positive podcasts, journal, sleep more, walk, exercise, read. These are some pretty great things that people would do. Very positive opportunities here.
Awesome. And let's think about this. If there's something you want to do, again, I'm a big goal setter. So for the second half of 2021, if this is a must for you, if this is something that when you do it, you have a much better, more effective day. You're in a much better state to run your business and to interact with your clients and your employees and your family. How can we make that happen? Is there something else we could shift around that maybe we're not consciously spending time on? Again, I think this is a good kind of a self-assessment, and then maybe saying, how can I make this happen? This is something that's a must for me.
And let me also add this as well. I did neglect to say in the beginning, one of the reasons why I'm a CARES consultant is I am also an entrepreneur and a small business owner. Have had my own business since 2012. So when those of you hear Eva and I talk, we are talking as as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as self-starters. So we're not projecting what we think should happen. We are living this conversation here. So let's kind of go to the next one here. Um,
Absolutely. So
yeah.
I'm a really big believer in setting up what I call rituals, practices, habits, and really forming habits. And how we start our morning is so incredibly critical, I believe, to the success of our day. And if you start to watch this stuff, some of you might already be doing this. And what I've been doing in the morning when I used to commute into Manhattan, which I've not been doing for the last 16 months or so, I would do this on a train. I don't suggest you do it while driving, but maybe, if you get that first cup of coffee before you actually start working, or in the morning at home, um, I'm think about maybe writing out some intentions. Somebody mentions journaling. So writing out like what will I want my day to look like, kind of setting some intentionality around it so that we're not just swept up in the reactive stuff, which is so easy to happen. And it definitely burns us out and makes us feel like someone's not focusing on the most important things. Gratitude, I journal about that. So what I start with is I write down, sometimes actually I do it, I dictate into my notes section of my phone. If I'm going first thing in the morning to my exercise class, I will say it out loud in my car and say, here's what I'm grateful for. Here are 3 things that went really well yesterday. Here's what I'm grateful that I'm healthy. I'm grateful the sun is out. I'm grateful I have a great family. I just start rambling on about what I'm grateful for, and then what the intentions are. You could say this, you could write it, but it helps our brain to focus and kind of actually acknowledge what's good. Exercise, movement, it could be stretching, could be going for that walk in the morning with the dog. Nature is an amazing healer. And believe it or not, even here in New York, I have some great woods that I get to walk in, whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon with my dog. Making your bed sounds ridiculous, but the studies have shown that people who make their bed, it's a great way to start the day off, because you say, well, already something's gone well. I've already accomplished something today. I love the idea, and I do this probably a couple of times a week, is I think about somebody who I'm super grateful for. It could be one of my employees who just did an amazing job, or had my back, or brought in some great business. And I send them a text in the morning, or an email. Usually it's a text, because I know they'll get it kind of more instantaneously, saying, thank you so much. I will do that with my husband, who commutes into Manhattan every single day, all through the pandemic, saying, thank you so much for XYZ, or for remembering this, or for taking out the garbage. Now, why would we do that? See, we set ourselves up for success by having some morning rituals. And especially if there's a way that you can express gratitude, either to yourself, to the universe, to your creator, to others, because fear and gratitude cannot coexist. And it is so easy to be triggered by fear when we have this much uncertainty that's been happening. And maybe, it's definitely lifting and we're in a much better place. But as a business owner, I could tell you that there's always uncertainty whether the business is going to continue to thrive the way it has, or whether the client's going to renew. So expressing gratitude, having some great morning rituals is going to set you up for success. And I know for sure that when I don't do any of these things, my day by 11, 12 o'clock, it tends to go sideways. So please pick something here that might work for you, or continue doing what you do, but think about having some great morning rituals.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on that real quickly because, before I really became aware of doing something like this, and, again, whether it's devotionals or prayer or any of these things on here, I would dismiss some of these things back in the day. Oh, what are a few little rituals going to do for me out there? But, you know, the way I try to explain it to people, it's like when you're managing your monthly budget, right? It's never really the rent or the mortgage, not that those are small nuts, but it's never really the rent or the mortgage of your home or your store that really impact significantly your performance. It's the little things, right? It's going out to dinner, it's going out for breakfast. It's I know for my family, it's how many times we go by Bo's for the week. It's like, all right, let's kind of not go to Bo's more than once this week here, folks. This is the little things that really add up. And the same thing is true in this situation. Little things add up on the positive side as well. And if you can walk into your office, if you can walk into your store, if you can, walk into your restaurant, if you walk into your car, wherever it is you conduct business, and you say there, and before you get in and say, I am grateful, I'm alive, I'm healthy, mom is good, my kid is doing this. And what I want to do today, I want to get some clarity on my inventory. I want to I want to try to come up with a new meal. I want to reach 2 new customers, whatever the case can be. It actually does make a difference. And I wish I was lying, but I am living proof. Evo's living proof. There's a whole bunch of data that even shares it as well. The little things make the difference.
Yeah. And then you
And
know why? Because
please.
we it helps our brain to focus on what we need to do, our mind. Like there's so many options of what we could do. And there's, one thing that's a definite is, as a business owner, we have to make so many decisions every day. I mean, I think decision fatigue is a real thing. So when you kind of identify where you want to focus, or what success would look like, or what you need to get done, I think we make better decisions, and we're so much more likely to impact our business and our success. Again, there's a lot of things we don't have control over, but there's also a lot of things we do have control over. And how we start our day is something we do have some control over. Not every day, but 5-10 minutes. I mean, literally in your car, talk to yourself. I do it all the time. If somebody's
Oh yeah.
parked next to me, they might think it's bizarre. They probably think I'm singing. That's what I figured. So
And there's one more point here before we go to the next slide that I cannot emphasize enough, which is fear and gratitude cannot coexist. Listen, if you're a small business owner, you dance with fear every day. Whether you are starting out, whether you're growing, contracting, whether you're having a record year or record decade, there's always fear because so much of what you built, unless you're, Amazon or Google, a storm can do a lot of damage, physical or metaphorical. But the more but the human mind can only process so many thoughts, emotions, and feelings in a given time. And if you choose to fill that time with gratitude and positivity, it just reduces the capacity for bad stuff to come in. It's not going to eliminate it. It's not a magic pill, but it's like a highway. If you got 6 lanes and 5 are taken by positive thoughts, you only got 1 lane left for something negative. So I cannot
that's a great analogy. I love it. Yep.
understand it enough. All right, so let's talk about morning rituals, and all right, this all connect to time and all that kind of stuff. For those, before I hand it over to Eva, when she had shared this with me, and a while ago, and knowing the way her mind works, this was to me one of the most amazing and universal ideas that I've ever come across, and helps me to this day prioritize my day. And I have found this to be applicable for any business, whether you work in higher ed, own your own business, retail, food, whatever you do in life, this makes sense. Eva, what is it?
Sure. So this is a time management matrix. It's from the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is about 20 plus years old, a real classic in time management. So basically, let's say you work 10 hours a day. All the time you spend at work will fall into one of these four quadrants. And there's a couple of things I really want to point out. So the first one, upper left-hand corner, are things that are urgent and important. You get off this webinar and there's an email, a call saying we have an urgent matter, a crisis, a deadline, something, and it's the priority. It's very clearly the priority, right? That's kind of clear, I think. Below that are things that are urgent but not important. Urgent but not important. That includes some interruptions. You're sitting there writing a business plan or updating your business plan for 2021, or reaching out to clients, or taking stock of what happened the first half of the year so you can make better decisions or reallocate assets. You're doing something I would call important, and something urgent comes and it interrupts you, right? So and then you get into a reactive mode, which I think a lot of us spend a lot of time there, including myself. To the right of that are distractions, where you come in and you're like, oh, I'm going to get something really important done. And all of a sudden, it could be an interruption. It could be you're looking at the internet, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself somewhere else. I think the biggest distractions we actually have, I call them self-interruptions. What does that look like? Have you ever sat down to do something quote unquote important, maybe write up a new job description, write somebody's review, again, business planning, thinking about identifying new business targets. All of a sudden you think, wait, I got to see what's going on with Joe. I didn't hear back from Joe. Or, let me check on that client that, I was supposed to call. Like all these, I call them self-interruptions. Your brain starts thinking of all these other things. Again, very common. I have a tool I'll share with you in a moment on how to deal with that. But here's the nugget. The upper right-hand corner are things that are important but not urgent. Important but not urgent. That includes planning, relationship building, new business development, actions on long-term projects, and any wellness activities. When is it absolutely urgent that you go for that walk or exercise, or stop and spend a half an hour making a great meal, or writing in that journal, or meditating, or getting that extra sleep? It's never urgent, but it's really important. So what I'm sharing here with you is that just understanding where our time goes, and if there's any way you can consciously plan, force time into that quadrant 2, that's where you get your best return on investment. That's what I call 80-20 rule. Yep, I bet most of you get 80% of your business from 20% of your clients or a particular industry. So the nugget here is to start to think about what belongs in that quadrant for you. And when you find the time to do it, you make the time to do it, you force the time to do it, I bet that you get a really great return on that day and the results. So just kind of, again, taking that where you spend your time and combining this will give you so much clarity. So that's the time management matrix, Ben. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm trying to highlight it, and I don't know if that's coming across as well here.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I have a phrase here at my business, which is, I don't want people who work hard. I want them to work smart. And if you find someone that constantly is putting in a tremendous amount of time, but they're just not achieving your desired results, chances are they probably are working hard, but they're not working smart. And Eva's 80-20 rule, right? And this is universal. 80% of your revenue can come from 20% of your client base, or 20% of your clients take up 80% of your time. That's generally what it is in the world. And again, it's relatively universal. 20% of your vendors, if you're in the restaurant industry, take up 80% of your time, or probably 80% of your cash, or both. All pretty consistent. When you find that you are spending 80% of your time, or you're managing employees that are taking 80% of their time to work hard but not smart, they are living in these not important boxes right here. That's where they're living, and that's where they're spending the majority of their time, right? And it doesn't mean they're bad, doesn't mean they're not good workers necessarily. It just means they're not prioritized and they're not focused in the right direction. And I will tell you that if COVID has done anything, at least in my business and probably most, if not all of yours, 99% of it was urgent and important, right? How do I get this business going? I'm in the live events business, folks. So trust me, when the fit hit the sand back last year, this is exactly where we were focusing on how to keep the lights on in the top left box. But now it's a matter of what else is important and how do we prioritize the urgent side here. So um, I think this is a phenomenal matrix. I think it's exactly where we need to have our conversations. And I think this kind of leads us nicely to our next question for the audience, Eva, which is share with us, and again, fully anonymous, what's an important but not urgent activity that you want to spend more time this month? And now, originally, we just had you want to spend more time in general, but one of the great things about Eva and how she's been successful is she actually sets real goals. So forget what do you want to do by the end of the year. I know Eva does not do New Year resolutions. It's about what do you want to do this week, this month, this day. So what's an important but not urgent activity for those of you that are participating live that you want to spend more time on in the month of July 2021? And Eva, you asked me first, so I'm going to go to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I did write this down this past weekend, and I usually have like both a personal goal and a professional goal, if that makes sense. So we're going to be I'm creating a whole new program for our law firm clients on how to make time for your well-being as you return to the office, because our clients have not been back in the office, mostly have been working remotely now for 16 months. So I'm going to be doing an entire campaign around that, aiming it for people to hire me to do those trainings, a new program in starting in the fall. And personally, I've been in and out of this, and again, some of these habits, I wish I could tell you once I get it down, I never stop doing it, and that's just not the truth. But I have meditated on and off for years, and I stopped doing it again a couple of years ago, and I just got another app on July 1st, and I'm 5 days into it now, because I really do think like even 10 minutes of kind of clearing my brain in the morning is part of my ritual. So those are my two goals for July.
All right, we have focusing on neglected social media accounts as it relates to my business.
Right.
Promotional marketing activities, flyers, videos, social media. Seeing some common themes here around marketing, which is very interesting. And yeah, it's when you're living the day to day trying to make the business work, marketing does often fall at the bottom of the
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. And can I just throw something in there? Because
Yeah.
I love businesses, and I love watching entrepreneurs who I think are such brave people do all this. Ask for help, seriously. Like, I block out time. So that's the kind of thing where you might say, you know what, Monday morning after I put out all the fires and things, like from 10:30 to 11:30, I'm going to do some social media posts, like literally schedule it on your calendar the way you would a meeting with somebody for half an hour, 45 minutes. With social media, if some of us might love it, some of us don't love it. I hire interns all the time to help me with my social media. I'm pretty good on LinkedIn, but I'm not going to create any fancy Instagram posts. So if you have some young people working with you, or you have some people who just really like that kind of stuff and are active on social media, just tap into your resources. I think, again, if you look at that 80-20 rule, just because you want to get it done does not mean you have to do it yourself. So just please think about that, because there are a lot of resources around. And I think, look, here's the goal. Once you've been brave enough to start a business, my mantra to myself is, how do I make the most amount of money doing the least amount of work, doing what I love most? That doesn't mean I'm lazy and not working 10 hours a day. It means that I want to focus on what I do particularly well and continue to grow the business, and really have other people, including my own kids sometimes, help me with things that are just, not easy for me, or I just don't love doing them. So please think about that. That can help us to really maximize our resources.
And I will tell you, the next slide is actually my favorite slide in this presentation, because how do I find more time? How do I prioritize my day? And I love this slide.
All right.
Man, Eva, talk us through number one.
Well, this is, if there's nothing else you walk away with, I promise this will be so helpful. So we all have something, usually, hopefully only one thing, sometimes two things each day where like, I'm dreading doing that. It could be talking to an employee who maybe needs some feedback or has been late or something hasn't been working out well. It could be calling a client or a customer and telling them that the order can't get done. It could be tackling something that is really challenging for you. I had never done a Zoom training, even though I had done 700 training programs prior to March of 2020. And learning how to train on Zoom is a whole nother thing. I don't get to see you the same way I get to see a live audience. And so every time I had to learn something new during COVID, I called it my COVID skills. But the point being is that anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, where you think, I'd rather do that tomorrow, later, do the worst things first.
Can I just
Why?
jump in on that one,
Yeah,
Eva, just real quickly?
I
For
love it.
me, let me just tell you, it's expenses. I don't know a small business owner that likes doing expenses, likes reconciling their books, whether you do your own or you work with. I hate doing it with a passion. So when it's that time in the month and I got to do it, I just muscle up and I get to my computer and I just plow through it so it's done. So Eva, I love it. I had to jump in. I'll go back to you, but
No. And I think that, that's a great example. I will sometimes bribe myself, which looks like I can't get up from this chair or this desk until I finish this email, memo, project, and then I can get a cup of coffee. Like I kind of like reward myself after I've done some of these things. But the reason it's so important to do these things and get them done is because when we don't, they sap our energy and they don't allow us to be fully present and be able to do anything that well. So I have created a rule, which is that if I have something I have to get done that is uncomfortable, unclear, not pleasant, I have to get it done by 11 a.m. Do the worst things first. Then the other one is, so I mean, I think that's the priority, like why? Because otherwise it takes away so much from other things, right? Anybody have an example of a worst thing other than, for me, it's usually like if I have to call a candidate and tell them they didn't get a job and I know that they really wanted it, they might have even done really well. Sometimes not the right person gets the offer. I've seen crazy things happen. That's always a really hard thing. What I do now is instead of just even sending an email, I will try to get on the call with them so they can actually hear my voice and my true empathy, compassion for the situation and make it, it might make it harder, but I think it actually goes so much better and it really cements the relationship. So yeah, somebody put something in. Do we have a,
I just asked actually. Yeah, I just asked if someone can share some. Oh, paperwork. Oh yes, dreaded paperwork. A lot of that. Absolutely. Very much the worst thing here. Eva, I'm just mindful of our time here going forward. So let's talk a little bit about stepping out of your comfort zone, because I think there's some really interesting slides coming up as well that I want to make sure we get to.
I mean, I think that for most of us, it's asking for business. I just don't know how else to say that. I mean, it might be something else in your specific business, but I think what I do now, and I during COVID, I actually wrote a book. It's called Your Fairy Job Mentor: Secrets for Success. It was specifically written for 19 to 24-year-olds because I felt so badly as to how their lives were incredibly uprooted during COVID. Not that ours weren't, but they should be having, I think, a different kind of experience, at least watching my own 2 college kids being ejected from their college experience. And what I wrote about in that book, which I want to kind of reiterate with you, is that what I've learned to do is connect that uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach with opportunity and growth. Opportunity and growth. Because I know in the past, whenever I felt that uncomfortable feeling, not wrong feeling, but kind of that tingly, can I get this done? Am I on the right track? Can I make this work? Is this client going to say no? Is this a stupid idea? Whenever I've done those things, 95% of the time, they've turned out to be some of the best things I've done. So connecting uncomfortableness with opportunity and rewiring myself to see it as something that could turn out to be an amazing thing that didn't exist before.
I call it a shock to the system. If you could find something that you can do that is completely out of character, that can shock your system, make you think a little differently, that's exactly what I would call that. Let's quickly talk about plan and prioritize, because I think the next slide's a nice segue into where we go from here.
Well, here's the thing, Ben, as business owners, like, you can come into work and think you're going to do X, and all of a sudden an opportunity comes up or a crisis comes up. So I think you want to have as much clarity as you can as to what your intentions are, your goals are, but oftentimes we have to plan and reprioritize. And that's just a reality of things, right? But I think that if you know where you're heading, you're so much better, you're going to be so much more likely even to come back on track, or to say, you know what, I thought this was going to be what I had to get done today, but now the client called, and I can land this great piece of business, and I got to put that on the shelf. So just the reality of planning, prioritizing, and reprioritizing during the course of a day.
The best example I will give everyone, and if you disagree, that's fine. I got no problems. But I find the single greatest useless activity you can do when starting a business is spend more than 90 seconds on a 3-year business plan. If the past year and a half has taught us anything, you can barely plan out a month, yet alone 3 years from now. So that's a great example where you plan, you prioritize, but you always reprioritize because everything changes, as we have seen for the past year. And fortune favors the prepared. And while certainly no one could really predict what happened last year, those that might have been able to be a little more agile or maybe think about reprioritizing, maybe the outcomes were a little bit different. So now's a really good time to do that. Um, but I want to now take this to the next level, which is about talent. So, all right, Eva, we talked about wellness and yourself and your time. What does this mean for me to recruit and
Yeah.
retain
Yeah.
people, which we all know, especially if you're in any service industry right now, it
Yeah.
is really hard to find people and keep people. So let's talk a little bit about how do
Yes.
you build rapport? How does this all tie in together, Eva?
Well, great question. And everything I've been reading and witnessing in the clients that we work with placing talent, and they're pretty specialized talent. They're marketing and recruiting people for law firms. People are coming out of this COVID experience, saying like, I want to be listened to. I want to be heard. And I know as a business owner, even myself, I'm like, listen, I got to get stuff done, and I need you to help me with this. We're here to serve clients. But I do think if we could stop a little bit and connect with people, there is almost a starvation going on for being heard and seen. And
Mhm.
I'm not a touchy-feely person. I think I'm a very analytical person. At least I score like thinker on the Myers-Briggs, which I've given to 6,000 professionals. But my point here is that when we have this much uncertainty and we're going through a live transition heading the right direction, which is awesome, if you could just check in with people, this could be that quadrant 2 thing, which is the best thing you've done, where maybe you haven't talked to one of your employees, or they've been struggling with something, just checking in and saying, hey, how are you doing? How's your mom doing? How's your kid doing? Whatever that might be. And then what I call pacing and matching their
Yes.
intensity, but not their emotions. Maybe they are really upset, but really kind of zeroing in and matching them where they are, and not necessarily feeling like you have to have all the solutions, but asking some good questions. And I'm sure we've all had that moment where you talk to a friend, a relative, an employee, a client, and all you did was really listen.
Yep.
Listen with your body, listen with your soul, give them their full attention, be fully present. And they said, wow, thank you so much. That was so helpful. And maybe you didn't actually even give them advice. Now, I
Right.
know as business owners, we're so solution oriented. What I'm suggesting is not even that, but building trust by really being present, listening, hearing people out, letting them even get clear about their own stuff, and matching their pace, their intensity, not necessarily the emotions. This works magically. And I'm sure many of you who built businesses and clients have been doing this with your clients. And that's where you build trust.
I just want to underscore pacing. It's why it's highlighted in green. Um, it's very easy for someone that has a challenge in their day, whether it's a high or a low challenge. Your natural response might be to match their emotions. Anger responds with anger, joy responds with joy. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but if you match their intensity but not the emotion, If they're methodical and they're slow, good or bad, match them with methodical and slow. If they're sort of fast paced and energetic, match the fast paced and the energetic. That is how you develop that relationship with your employees and your customers. And we're going to continue this theme
Ben,
right
but
here.
before we go on, I just want to go back
Oh,
for one
please.
quick second. I just wanted to share one specific thing that I think all of us have had to deal with at times. And this is a moment of true opportunity. If any of your employees come to you, or you even witness them being mistreated by a client, a vendor, somebody else, and where they come to you, go, that person was just really just ridiculous, and they yelled at me even though I had nothing to do with it. I don't know any boss that hasn't, or any business owner hasn't had to deal with this. That is a perfect moment to do what we're talking about, where you listen to them.
Yep.
They feel like you've got their back. You might even call that client, who's going to be very different with you probably than they were with them, and say, look, is there something I can help you with? I understand something went wrong, and have your employees back, unless they did something that you thought was just, misaligned with your values and wrong. Oh my gosh, the loyalty, the feeling that they were taken care of, the rapport, the trust, that will go such a long way. And my husband has his own legal practice, and he's got one person who's been with him now 24 years. And I have watched this in and out. I've had to do it sometimes. He does it more frequently. People tend to chew out his people more because they're irate about things, whatever. But please think about, those are the kinds of moments where you're fully present, you're listening, you're hearing it, you're really with them, even letting them vent. And then, you could choose whether you take an action or not. Game changer.
I can't underscore this enough as a competitive advantage to hiring and retaining your people. Someone interviews for a job, especially this day and age, unless the money is insanely different, people are going to choose to work for someone they just like and respect. So this becomes a major hiring competitive advantage. Let's talk a little bit about phrases to build trust. Eva, what did
Yeah.
this one mean here?
Yeah. So this is exactly what I'm saying. So if they say to you, like, I need X, Y, like whatever issue they bring up, it's okay. What I hear you saying is, did I get that right? This is, again, really hearing somebody out, as opposed to just jumping in with, well, here's how we can solve the problem, or assuming you've fully gotten something. There is something truly magical about somebody truly hearing what you say and getting it versus their own interpretation of it. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you, I learned some of these terms, not any business class, but in a marriage, like,
Yes.
relationship class. Okay. So try to hear a significant other. It's a game changer. Tell me more. Did I hear that right? Did I get that right? Oh my gosh, when people feel heard and seen. So we talked about what to do, and here's how to do it. Try some of these. Maybe put a little sticky next to your phone at work, on your computer. Try this with people, and especially with employees. I'm telling you, you're going to build the kind of trust that builds loyalty and truly builds companies.
And I'm going to go to the next slide, but before we go through it, another phrase that I use, and it's supposed to be a comforting phrase, so I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. But when an employee comes to me with a problem that's not urgent, going back to that box, right? Those bottom halves of that urgent, not urgent, but maybe important. I will say to them, I understand it's an issue, but it's not a today problem. So when someone comes to you with a couple of issues, inventory, supply chain, paint, light, clients, marketing, platform, social media, whatever the case can be, if it's not that urgent, it's not a today problem. That can also be used as a connecting phrase to someone that's just trying to look for some level of understanding that they don't need to worry and fix that issue today. And that goes into this slide, which is show you are listening,
You sure you,
coworkers,
and
employees,
Ben,
and customers.
I like what you just said. I think it's important because some people will take up a lot of attention, and they just need there might be extreme extroverts, so they need that. What I do sometimes is say, what, can you put that on my calendar for Thursday, or can you put that on my calendar for next Tuesday? Send
Right.
me an invite and we'll discuss it then. So they don't feel blown off or kind of ignored, but we can talk about it another time. But this too, like, again, even if you don't totally agree with some aspect of how they handle it or the issue they bring in, I respect and versus but. The but cuts people off. I appreciate but, I agree but if you say I agree and, it's again, now I do this, like before I get on the phone with a candidate, a client, I literally stop for a second and say, what's my intent from this conversation? What will make this a good conversation? If you come into conversations with intent and kind of having cleared your brain a little bit of whatever else you've dealt with them before that morning, and be fully present, it's unbelievable how you're going to hear things you wouldn't otherwise hear. And by the way, this is where I am a big believer that multitasking does not work. Multitasking does not work. If you ever try to read your emails while you're on the phone with a client, you're going to miss something and they're going to hear you not listening. Being present, I think, helps our well-being and helps our relationships. And it is the hardest thing I think I've said today. So certain phrases might help. And there's an energy behind that people, again, feel like they're important and you're listening to them. And right now, there is such a shortage of talent across this country. So the people who are going to feel like your values are aligned, your talent is important to you, you're listening to them. That does not mean you're catering and saying yes to everything, by the way. There's a difference between
Yes.
yes to everything and just saying, I'll do whatever you want, and letting people feel like they're being heard, seen, and your energy is with them in a present tense. So I'm hoping some of these terms can help.
Well, as we kind of come to the last few minutes here, we're going to end as we started, which is on self-care. And this is really important. Eva introduced this term to me about feeding yourself. And to me, it struck another chord, Eva, full of wisdom, of course, but this really, really struck me. So, Eva, where did this come from? What is this about?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I had done this 11-month training through the Institute for Integrated Nutrition, which is trained. It's partly nutrition, but for me, it was really about well-being. And one of their primary concepts was this concept of primary food. Now, normally if I said primary food, I think, instinctively I would have said it's what you feed yourself, your food, your drinks,
Right.
what you put in your mouth, how you nourish yourself. And their concept was that that's not your primary food. That's actually your secondary food. Your primary food is how you feed yourself the right balance of work, relationships, physical activity, and spirituality. And spirituality could be religious or could be however you connect to a source that's bigger than you, nature, reading, inspiration, whatever that looks like for you. So I like this model for us, and maybe something you could even share with your family and employees, in that if you're ever feeling out of sorts, mostly depleted, like that there just the reserves are kind of gone. And that's what, to me, what self-care is all about, is putting things back in so you have more to give. You can contribute at a higher level to your clients, to your business, to your employees. So whenever I start to feel kind of like, I'm starting to feel like, for me, the feeling goes like, I get irritated. Like anybody who asks me anything, I'm like, why are you asking me things? It could be my kids, it could be. And then I realized, okay, I'm on like that the gasoline nodge, whatever, the gasoline gauge inside of me has like gone to like close to zero. I'm like, okay, what do I need? Do I need to connect with somebody? And I did this morning. There's a friend of mine who lives where I live. And every time I walk with her, I smile, I laugh. She just got great energy. We've known each other since our boys who just turned, my youngest one turned 20. I say since our boys were in kindergarten. And I reach out to say, hey, can you go for a walk 8:00 tomorrow morning on the Hudson River? Physical activity could be movement, it could be running, it could be walking. Spirituality is I need to connect to something bigger than me. By the way, somebody mentioned reading. And I think a lot of us are not reading the way we used to, at least. And the studies have shown that 20 minutes of reading, not reading on your phone, but reading an actual book before you go to bed, will help you to sleep better. So my point here is this, that if you look at those self-care things, the ones right before Ben, just if you feel out of sorts, what do you need to feed yourself so you get that gauge back up? Because the more we have, the more we can give. And if we don't take care of ourselves, it's like putting that mask on the plane. You can't help anybody else when you're depleted. So please think about this and see if it's something you'd like to add.
And that's a great segue here to some self-care end of day rituals.
Right. Right.
Everyone's going to read the first one and say, what on earth are these two people talking about?
Well, but
So
actually, but before I start these, this will be our last major slide. Does somebody have a question? I saw something pop up in the feed. I don't know if you want, there was a question.
uh, was not a question. It was more just reiterating something that we had talked about. And if you have questions, by the way, you
Please jump
can
in.
pop them in the feed. Yep, and we'll get to them
Right.
certainly
Okay.
as we close up on our last few minutes here.
So we talked about how to start the day with some good self-care rituals, habits, and I want to talk about how we end our day. Why is this important? I think having some good closure to the day can be helpful, but also it can help us sleep better. And sleep is a major part of self-care. So sponge technique. You could use this at night. You could use this after you hang up a phone call. It's difficult. Every time I have something that irritates me, it could be a difficult client, it could be dealing with a technology issue, which for me is really stressful. I will, after it's resolved or after I've dealt with it, I take an imaginary sponge and I sponge it out of my brain. And then I used to throw it into the Hudson River on the Metro North train back from Manhattan. You could throw it out the window, down the toilet. It's imaginary. But the point is, get rid of that crap. I'm serious, right? Recall 3 things that went well that day. Again, that gratitude for what went well. Even if it was a really hard day, I bet you can find 3 things that did go well. Turn off all electronics 30 minutes before bedtime. I struggle with this. I probably look at my phone right up until I go to bed. Maybe it's a work in progress for me. Read or listen to something pleasurable, that kind of, something inspiring. This has just been something I don't do. I do not watch the news first thing in the morning or the end of the day, because I know it sticks with me and it's really hard for me to get rid of that. So for me, that's a self-care technique, is not to watch news. So what could work for you? Is there something you could do to help you sort of end the day and get yourself ready for a great night's sleep?
Yes, absolutely. And I will just echo that and say I don't watch any news at any point, because it's
I don't,
all
I don't,
pretty bad at this point here.
I don't
Um,
need.
all right, so let's focus on our key takeaways here. So really, what even I want to get home here as we close up with our last few minutes is, hopefully there's something here that you will now do differently in your day. It could just be one thing. All this wisdom that Eva has shared from her experience, if you do one thing differently, this is successful. Um, what is one thing you'll do differently for others? How will you handle a coworker, an employee, family member, an interviewee, a customer, of course? What will you do differently? And then number 3, will you prioritize yourself more? Because for those of us that have launched our businesses and have navigated them through ups and downs, we all know that depleted feeling. And when you are depleted, no one wins. Not your work life, not your family life. You are just useless. And in some cases, you're a negative impact on your business and your home life. So, Eva, I want to give you the last few words as we hit our time here, to kind of bring it all together, and then I'll give us the final close off here. So,
Wait, hang on. My dog is knocking on the door. I'm sorry. I got to let him in.
that's okay. A
All right.
dog is another phenomenal way that you can focus on yourself and
He,
hopefully
he,
causes less stress.
he's my work. He's been my work buddy for 16 months. So,
Yep.
what I want to say is that none of this is indulgent. These are musts. So, for example, and you're probably thinking, oh, how do I do this? Like, you could literally sit in your driveway for 5 minutes before you walk into the house and use that sponge technique, or while you're driving, just say what you're grateful for, or literally make a commitment to be fully present with whoever you're thinking about or talking to. So like I say to myself, when I write my intention, today I will be present and I will be a present in others' lives. Like I will be fully present. This multitasking, thinking you're going to get 5 things done at the same time, does not work. So my major thing is, like, if there's something that really resonated with you, don't just think it. What I do then is I literally open up my phone, my notes section, my phone, and I will write down July actions, well-being actions, and I'll write it down and do that right then and there, and then look at them and try to do them. So if anybody could share with us a takeaway that they really think they could use and they will use, and maybe If you commit to all of us, you're more likely to do it, because I think saying things out loud and saying, I'm going to do this, makes us so much more likely to do them, because we feel like, we're going to be more accountable. And all we're asking you to do is to take good care of yourself and make time for your well-being, so you could function at the level that you expect of yourself and have the reserves and the energy to sustain that. What do we have?
So much. Well, we have about 30 seconds left, and we all know small business owners live and die by the clock. So we're not going to have time for any Q&A at this point. But here are Eva's and my contact information if you want to follow up with either one of us for more information. This session, of course, will be available on replay. I want to thank you so much, Eva. You were so generous with your time. I know you are very busy, but you have so much wisdom. And on behalf of the South Carolina SBDC, I want to say thank you for sharing it with us. I am grateful for you as a friend, and I'm grateful that you were able to join me today on this webinar.
Ben, it was a true pleasure. And anybody out there want to link with me on LinkedIn, that's a great way to stay in touch. I wish you all amazing success, and please make time for your well-being. Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you, SBDC.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
And before we close, everyone, you will be receiving a post-event survey that will be emailed to you shortly. So those that respond to that will receive the presentation slides and the link to the recording. And we will more than likely distribute that on Monday of next week, which I believe is July the 12th. So thank you again for everyone attending, and we appreciate your time.